This is CyberSound, your simplified and fundamentals-focused source for all things cybersecurity, with your hosts, Jason Pufall and Stephen Maresca.
Welcome to CyberSound. I'm your host, Jason Pufall, joined today by Steve Maresca, and actually we have a special guest from Infima, Joel Cahill. Welcome, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. It's good to be here.
So Joel's the CEO, co-founder of Infima, which is a information security awareness training platform. I think you do even a little bit more than that. I think you're doing some phishing work now. It's a product that we use heavily. We have started to embed it now with all of our managed clients to really give. I mean, Steve and I come from a education background. I think we both feel strongly that security education is probably 50% of the things that we think need to be implemented from a security program rather than just purely technology. I mean, it's so incredibly important to arm your workforce with an understanding of the risks that are out there, make them part of your security strategy. You can solve a lot with technology. You can solve a lot more by educating and training all the people that work for you. So I think, Joel, if you can spend some time on, really Infima's philosophy, and hopefully your philosophy dovetails exactly with what I just kind of outlined, right? So let's make sure of that. But
for sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. I want to pull on one of those things that you just said up front, because security awareness training feels like it's a small part sometimes of the security landscape. But to your point, there is, and it is one piece of a larger puzzle, but there is, like you said, call it 50% is actually training your people to avoid some of these, the most common mistakes that lead to breaches. So we have lots and lots of layers of security, lots of things into ones and zeros, I say. But then there's just this little bit that we focus on the human element. And so that's where, that's exactly what we do at Infima is we're focused on how do we first of all find and then change the unsafe behaviors that employees are unaware of and that can lead to risks for an organization. And so, security awareness training has now been called out by every regulator, starting with NIST and flowing down from there. It is literally in every single regulation that you're going to find in some capacity, whether they touch on it briefly or they go in with more detail. So that's become a huge driver of it, whether it's a regulatory need or the other is cybersecurity insurance. And it's a requirement that it has to be in those, that it's got to be implemented for really every cyber insurance carrier. And then a lot of it really comes up, it's discovered in these security audits when you say, oh yeah, hey, are we doing it? And how are we doing it? And things like that. And so, as we get to work with Vancord, what we ultimately provide is that training for all of those end users to match what's required on the compliance side to make sure that you're hitting all of your regulatory needs and satisfying your cyber insurer, while working on also rooting out those unsafe behaviors, which you alluded to is we do a lot of that also with a lot of phishing simulations and heavily focus on the behavioral aspect of security.
At the end of the day, compliance is helpful. It helps to make attestations to third parties that you're acting with rigor and intention. But we also think of this as a proactive type of an activity as well. Individuals, staff, they are occasionally, more often than not these days anyway, the first indicators of something occurring in an environment or an attack that might be underway. Security awareness training is simply one of those indicators that help to get ahead of a problem before it becomes something really massively impactful. So it's really important to us. We have an extensive background in incident response, and frankly, there's always a human element.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another way that we do look at it is, you can see, oh yeah, we've got elevated hits on the firewall, so we might have attacks, that are more pronounced coming at us. Well, same thing. If we can see that there are a lot more of users, and clients who are clicking on phishing emails, and we're starting to see that risk is increasing. And so, then there are several things that we get to work on through there. Again, they're very behavioral bent, because at the end of the day, you don't want, there's no business owner who wants, his or her employees to have to become cybersecurity professionals just so that they can open an email, like whether or not they should open a Dropbox, attachment. It comes down to how can we find and then improve on the unsafe behaviors while giving them the knowledge and just to your point on compliance, that is a piece of it. And then how do you go deeper so that you actually change behaviors? How do you actually improve the security posture of your team?
I think, one of the things, and Steve and I often say this when we're doing in-person training, because periodically, companies want to actually do that way. I always position training that it has a personal and a professional benefit. And I think it's really important that we sort of speak like that, because the reality is you're using online banking at home and you're getting the same phishing emails at home that you would be at work. And, all the things that we're training, because, typically, right, what Vancord is doing, what Infima is doing is generally institutionally based, right? You're training large groups of people, typically in a professional environment for that regulatory purpose. But all the stuff that you're training on translates into the personal side, and I think protects people as individuals. And I think, there's I don't want to be too broad on this, but there's a nobleness to that, I think, because it really does arm people with information, and information allows them to make better decisions and ultimately be better protected. So I mean, it's such a hugely important space, I think.
Yes. Yes. I also don't want to elevate ourselves too far, just like you were saying, Jason, but in reality, there is an awareness of a problem. In a broad sense, there's an awareness of a problem, but there's also a lack of understanding often on what do I do about it. And that's an uncomfortable place to be. That's
For sure.
That's not a place that people want to live in. So you either hide from it, you kind of look the other way, or you can kind of do the work to educate yourself on what that risk is and how do I mitigate it. And so, in this case, it's fortunate that, regulators and cybersecurity insurance providers are forcing this into those organizations, because training, let's be honest, is never a particularly fun thing. It's not like people get geared up and get real excited. That's the 1% of the organization who's real excited for new training. But what really happens where that light bulb goes off is when, we're pairing the words on a page of training or to share knowledge with them. We pair that with these sophisticated simulated phishing attacks, and somebody, whether it's you or somebody else who clicks on it, that generates the conversation of like, whoa, this is way more real than I thought.
Right.
I'm glad that wasn't a legitimate attack.
So you did beat me to it a little bit, because I did want to say training is kind of boring. Right. I mean, your point is well made. Nobody gets that excited for the annual training that you have to sit through that takes you 60 to 90 minutes. And then you've got your obligatory questions that you have to walk through and hope you get right. Right. Like the model just isn't that great. And I think you do something different. And it would be great if you spend a minute on, how do you approach it? Maybe to make it less boring, maybe to make it more sticky.
Yeah. So, this was something that I mean, you and I got to connect over on. When we first were discussing working together, was your background in actually this exact space in security awareness training and teaching people how to become safer. And, so how do you get people to engage? A lot of it, is driven by, my co-founder and me. When we started this, we met with professors at University of Florida in both psychology and cybersecurity departments. And the key thing was like, hey, we think that this is a behavioral problem more than, what I would call a ones and zeros. It's a behavioral problem more than a knowledge problem. And so you can pump all sorts of knowledge into people, but if they don't change their behavior, then it doesn't really matter. And so that partnering up with the psychology and cybersecurity departments allowed us to jump in and really understand a lot better on, timing of courses, when should courses be delivered, video versus text, how much content should be in a course. We even looked at like colors and things to see what drives things. One of the biggest things that came out of it is, from a phishing standpoint, is bright flashing red lights after somebody clicks on a phishing email actually just is very counterproductive, so we take a little bit lighter touch there. But the when it comes to the training, there's a little bit of levity in there. There's something, it's a serious subject, but we want to give a little bit of levity so that it makes somebody like, okay, I'm not just like grinding through this next training and I've just got to push through. But we also keep those trainings in the 5 to 10 minute range. So anybody, it's bite-sized, they can come in and take it. And there isn't really much of an excuse that you don't. And the objective isn't to try to get a gotcha. The objective is just to have somebody who wants to engage with that training, because part of it is that it's not as bad as they feared in the first place. But the other is it actually provides some content that helps to, the problem we were talking about earlier, like people are aware that there's an issue. They don't know what to do about it. And we're helping to give some peace of mind there, to share with them, hey, this is what your organization is doing. These are the things that are helpful for you to do in your office and at home to keep you safer.
So I want to spend a moment on that, Joel, if you don't mind, because confusion, uncertainty breeds inaction. There are many phishing events that go unreported because people don't know what to do. Or worse, they know they've done something that they perhaps should not have, and they're embarrassed. In my opinion, modification of behavior and a reaction is really crucial. So your comment specifically about avoiding blinking red lights, avoiding a feeling of punitive reaction, causing them to feel like they've done something incorrect, that's a hugely beneficial shift of the thought pattern, in my opinion. So please spend a moment on that, because I think that's really central to everything we're talking about.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. And you're right. You've been through enough incident response. You kind of got to see how people do react post making one of these mistakes, post falling for a phishing email, post kind of opening the door for a breach, different organizations handle it differently. But the objective, that we want to portray is, hey, there's a real attacker, there's a real enemy out there. And our best bet is to first, prepare, and then second, to be open to communicating internally if there is something that is either a concern or an anomaly or something along those lines. So if in the training you are punished and penalized or ostracized for making a mistake, when the real thing happens, you're certainly hiding under your desk at that point.
Right.
So we take a little bit lighter touch. Somebody clicks on one of these simulated phishing attacks. There's an immediate, hey, this could have been bad. Well, we also do measure that. Most people just X out of that window. We know that they're going to X out of that window right away because nothing happened, right? It's gone. You kind of look around. My computer's not flashing. There's no sounds coming out of my speakers. So then the next morning, we have this email that just says, hey, Steve, yesterday at 12:25 p.m. you did click on this email with this subject line. Here's what we're going to do in the future. It's not like a name and shame. This is your third strike. You're in trouble. It's saying like, this is what happened. Now, because you did click on that email, you are going to be retargeted for additional phishing, and it will snowball because ultimately, while it's not name and shame, it needs to be highlighted internally to be like, hey, like, maybe, sorry, Steve, I'm just using your name, but so maybe Steve needs a little bit more attention here, so we're highlighting where that potential risk is, but without doing it in a way that makes you, one, angry at your employer, or two, embarrassed for your either your own ego or stability or something, makes somebody like quickly hide. Because as you know, when you click on a real phishing email, you can't just X out of it and it's going to suddenly stop the encryption.
And I think it's really what you just said that was important, because there are egos at play, and frankly, you're often training really educated people. So it's not like they don't take kindly to being made to feel foolish, to be made to feel stupid. So you really do need to be subtle, and you really do need to sort of describe what the institutional goal and objective is, and try to describe what that outcome will be. But one of the things that I think we've done historically, when we talk about, how did your organization fare in the phishing test, we always sort of flip it on the other side and say, well, 90% of you did not click on this phishing email. Trying to use more positive language. Even, frankly, the numbers are the same, right? 10% of the people still did, and some portion probably provided their credentials. But hey, last month, 85% of you, did not click on this link. This month, 90% of you did not. Like, you can show positivity still and use better language. Absolutely. And I think we really try to focus on that.
And that
Yeah,
applies to interpersonal too, because re-emphasizing the same, if you can benefit interpersonal reactions so that people are more inclined to talk to each other instead of
yeah.
shy away, I mean, that's what you want to get out of it.
And on that, and every organization that Vancord serves is a little bit different, and there's always different personalities and stuff. But one of the things that has been most critical with getting internal participation and engagement is when somebody high up is willing to say, hey, I did stumble for one of those phishing emails. These things are legit. And what we do is at Infima, and what we provide for Vancord is we're taking the best of the wild, and we are circulating that through with all the clients. So we're mimicking those real attacks. We do it on a continuous basis so that it's not these discrete one-off things, because attackers don't just say, okay, it's been 6 months and now it's 6 months later, we're going to go attack,
Right.
Acme construction. They're firing these things off every moment, every second of the day. But when you have that person, call it a partner or managing partner at a law firm who is willing to come out and say, like, hey, I did click on one of these things. This, we need to pay attention. That suddenly just lets everybody breathe in the room. Like, okay, we are aware that this is a real risk, that these things can happen. Now let's all, kind of band together to go to try to protect ourselves from this attacker, versus kind of like, I better not be the one who clicks, because if I'm the one who clicks and I'm being held out, in reality, it's such a behavioral thing. We've gone into longer discussions on this, but the time of day that something hits, the mindset that you're in, the stress level that you're in. If you've just gotten, you found out your kid's sick at school, and you're having to cancel a meeting and try to run, and then you just happen to get, a Dropbox email or a LinkedIn email or a voicemail attachment or something that you're like, oh, this could be relevant. I need to pop in and go see that. The attacker didn't know any of those things, but they just happened to send it, and it got through it got through the email filters at the wrong time. But when they're able to send millions and billions literally of these emails at any time, their hit rate doesn't have to be very large. And these things, we all know they can get through. They happen to get through at the wrong time, it makes all the difference in the world. And so the atmosphere in which somebody receives it, there's a lot of context to it. That can make all the difference. If somebody's just was told that they were going to they just had lunch with somebody, they're like, hey, I'm going to send you money via Cash App or Venmo or something. You'd be amazed the number of times somebody clicks on one of those that we circulate, and they're like, so-and-so was just telling me they were going to send me money. Well, you're like, well, you said Jane was going to send it, and it's Brenda on the Venmo. It clearly wasn't that same person, but we're triggering like, somebody was supposed to send me something, I'm clicking on that thing.
Right.
And so, they get you at the perfect wrong time, and we see it over and over.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all agree how important it is. We're largely, really, we come from technology backgrounds in many ways. And I think it's been, for me, I think, interesting to see my own shift in this space over the years, to just recognize that technology plays a role, but a well-informed and educated workforce is, honestly, in my opinion, at least as important as the technology investments that you're going to make. And I think frankly, it's why we've chosen, to work with you, because I think you do this in, sort of bite-sized pieces that most people can actually absorb and hopefully take something from. It's done in a way that's, not obtrusive, which in my opinion in this awareness space is really important. And it gets the message out, broadly and regularly. So, all things that I think hopefully end up resulting in a sort of a higher outcome of success, right? A reduced likelihood for, clicking on some of these email messages, and frankly, just a better understanding of what some of the risks are that are out there.
Yeah, we want to dispel some of either the misunderstandings or myths, while also just providing, end users with a real clarity on what those risks are, so that they're not acting out of fear, and then they can actually act with more confidence. And at the end of the day, like you said, unobtrusive. You just don't have time for every person to become an expert on every email, and they got 100 emails when they wake up and get into their inbox, and they don't need to go and have to do all of the research to see if every single one of those things is legitimate. It's like, how do we implement those safe behaviors so that the people are empowered, not in fear, and can continue to be productive.
So we're pretty much up against time here. So I do want to wrap up. I think I'll wrap up by saying a couple things. First, anybody who's listening, if they're interested in effective and fairly straightforward training to implement for their organizations, reach out to me or Joel. We're happy to talk to you. If you want to take it a step further, and I think we joked about this at the beginning, right? If you want to just nerd out on training and applications and, how do you actually get a message, to a receiver and sort of how does all that look? That probably, Steve, me, Joel, great people to talk to. So we're happy to have hey, how does training work psychologically, and go down that road with you as well. Joel, I appreciate you joining today. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, of course, and a pleasure to work with you as we've gotten both of our companies more closely together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Jason and Steve. It's great to be with you guys. I appreciate this.
For sure.
Likewise.
And thanks, everybody, for listening. We, as always, hope you got some value out of this. Took one nugget, right? This is our training platform. So took one nugget from this and walk away better informed than you were when you started. Thank you.
We'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to get in touch at Vancord on LinkedIn or on Twitter at Vancord Security. And remember, stay vigilant, stay resilient. This has been CyberSound.